Good afternoon and welcome. My name's Sean Callahan-Denish. I am one of the recruiters here on the Futureforce team at Salesforce. And again, would like to say thank you for joining us here this afternoon. So I am one of the recruiters that support our hiring for our business development associate role. And today we're going to go through what the role looks like. We're going to talk about what the hiring process looks like. We're going to hear from one of our former business development associates, as well as just kind of all the ins and outs. And then hopefully at the end, we'll have some time to be able to answer some of your questions. So right now, I'm going to ask one of our former business development associates, Dylan, to join me here on stage. So Dylan.
Thank you, Sean. Excited to be here today. Excited to talk about my BDA experience and my process of getting hired here at Salesforce, and then what I'm doing now, progressing from BDA now onto a sales development role here at Salesforce. So really excited to be here today, Sean. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, welcome. So Dylan, just to get started, like, where did you go to school? What office are you working out of? Come on, give me like the whole spiel.
Yeah, absolutely. So I went to Michigan State University, go green. And I'm from Michigan, but then I started back at Salesforce in the Denver, Colorado office back in 2020 in November. And then I've been here ever since, and I've been loving it since. It's enjoyable.
Awesome. And what Dylan didn't tell you was that he worked with the best recruiter here at Salesforce, myself, as he went through the process. So let's go ahead and hop in. So first off, let's start kind of what the business development associate role looks like. What is that day-to-day in the BDA role for you?
Yeah, great question, Sean. So the BDA role, it's really split into two main characteristics. So the first characteristic is 70% of the role is going to be, you're going to be working with an outbound business development team. And that team's going to be working with different account executives here. So what your main role there is to be adding value to that BDR team that you're working with, or business development team. So be working with BDRs that are tenured in sales, and then the list that you're creating for them, they'll be calling on to prospect and other things of that nature to set those meetings and generate more opportunities and revenue for the Salesforce side of things. So you work pretty close with the BDR teams. You work really close with your BDR manager to help make that team hit their quota. You're really efficient with your time and things of that nature, and really gets you a good idea of what the sales process is. On the other side of things, the other 30% is the development part of the thing. So the development part is just making you a better salesperson and really helping develop your career. And what I mean by that is that'll be like different milestones that you'll talk about, different other preps, so that way you're really prepared for when you go from the BDA stop into the sales development role, and then from the sales development role to a business development role, and then from business development to that account executive role for the ultimate goal there. So they'll have different milestones that I'm sure we're going to get into, and how those really help you develop and become a better sales professional and better person all around.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's awesome. And you can see on that graphic, you can really see what that career progression looks like, going from day one. You're going to start learning how to work with that BDR team and pulling those contacts and leads. And that's going to be something you'll do throughout the duration of your time as a business development associate. And then really you're going to build on top of that. You're going to increase that Salesforce business acumen. You're going to understand the selling methodology, and you're going to understand that Salesforce value proposition and how to implement it through that selling methodology. You're going to understand, and go through role plays. And Dylan will talk about that here in a minute of, what those role plays look like, overcoming objections, managing challenging conversations with customers. All that's going to be part of that BDA experience and the development aspect. And then really preparing to be promoted to a sales development representative. So Dylan, first off, starting with pulling those contacts and leads for your team of BDRs. How often do you connect with your BDR team? What resources or tools are you using to pull those leads for your BDRs?
Another great question, Sean. So the way I would meet with, or how I set up my business for Salesforce when I was a BDA, was I met with all of my BDRs every 2 weeks. So that way I made sure I was aligned with the contacts that they were trying to have me add, and then different ones that they're trying to modify for what businesses they want to go after is the kind of goal. So that's how I would meet with them. And then the tools that I would use a lot was LinkedIn Sales Navigator. So you could pull up a list of company X and say, I want to find out every single person that's in sales, director and above. And then I would input all that information. And then to get more of that value for those contacts that you're adding, we would partner that with Zoom Info. And then with Zoom Info, you'd be able to find like their direct line for their cell or their direct line to their desk, and then also getting a good email so you can connect better with them that way. So that was my main tools that we would use for being able to connect. And then from there, I would mainly just follow up with like the BDR manager to make sure like that I was hitting my metrics that I had for myself as a BDA, and that all some of the contacts I was adding was really helping to add value for their team.
Yeah, definitely. Good. And let's dig a little bit deeper on like those contacts. So, your BDR team, you're working closely with them. Are you finding net new business opportunities? Are you finding current customers? What do those contacts and those customers that you're identifying look like?
Well, they can look like a lot of different things, Sean. So the first type is we could have those current customers. We could have one of our really large accounts that we're already working with. There's a lot of different segments here at Salesforce, but a lot of them could be current customers, and we'd have one really large account and they'd say, hey, let's look at all directors at this company. Like, I just want to speak to someone in a higher level position. So we would go and you just have like those different opportunities and use that LinkedIn, the Zoom Info side of things. But then on the other side over here, we also would have those net new contacts, the whole new companies that we haven't gotten into with Salesforce beforehand. So then a lot of my BDRs would put a lot of trust in me and then say, hey, like, you've been doing this for a minute now. I want you to go and find like the best contacts that you think would be a good angle to go into for Salesforce at this company. So a lot of the ways you could do that was looking at a person like just recently changed jobs, and at their old company, they use Salesforce, but now it's a new sales director. So that'd be a really good contact, for example. And then that really just leads into the conversation of saying a BDR could then reach out. I would message the BDR and say, hey, this person just started at company Y. At company X, they were using Salesforce, and now they're a new director. I think you have a really good shot at making an opportunity there. And then they would call in and they'd say, yeah, we used to love Salesforce. We don't have it here. Let's see if we can get it implemented. So that's kind of an example of what we'd go after, Sean.
Okay, awesome, good. And then thinking about, that relationship with your BDR, I know you mentioned that you were connecting with your BDR, the BDR managers, as well as your BDRs. How much did you use them from support and to help you develop and grow, as well as like connecting with SDRs? Like, what did those relationships look like?
Another great question, Sean. So a lot of the way that BDR support would work, so I mean, it would work with my support of like the context I was added, but then on the other side, like I was saying with that 30% of the milestones, is whenever I had to practice like with a presentation or a mock call or anything like that, I would always lean on my BDRs, especially that I was closer with, to meet with and ask them questions of their experiences and how to go about that. And then also practicing for like those presentations as well. Salesforce does a really good job is with mentorship. They'll call it different trail guides. I've had a couple that I've been really lucky with so far at Salesforce with Susanna and Clayton. And they've both been really helpful, especially on the BDA side on prepping for my presentations. And then now into the SDR side with Clayton, just teaching me a lot of different ways and being effective in the role.
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome. And then thinking about, your team as a team of BDAs in that Denver office, what was that team structure like, and how critical was it to have them to lean on?
Yeah, that was really important for me. That's a really big reason why I joined Salesforce, was like the teams that I'd be put around and the people that I'd be working with. So with the team that I had on BDA, like I remember having one presentation that I just knew didn't really go that well. I remember going back in the team chat and just being like, oh, this really wasn't rough. Like, this was bad. Like, how am I going to recover, and like things of that nature. And then instantly a lot of the people on my team, just like the 6 people that were in Denver and the other 6 that were in Chicago, and the way that was kind of split up because it's all remote now right now. Mm-hmm. They were just really supportive instantly and saying like, oh no, you're going to crush it. You're going to be really able to do well next time. And then also just giving me pointers on how to improve instantly, and just being able to schedule the time, not just with my manager, but with other colleagues that are in my same position, and leaning on them to help support me and be successful. So that was really nice.
Yeah, for sure. And so, I know we've talked about a lot of different terms, our BDA and SDR and BDR. So I want to kind of go through what that career progression looks like and what each one of those roles really looks like. So when you come in, you're going to start as that business development associate, which Dylan went through. And in that role, you're focusing on, like Dylan said, 70% of your time is focusing on prospecting and research and identifying those contacts for your BDR team to reach out to. And then the other 30% is going to focus on development. Most people are going to be in that business development associate role for 4 to 6 months. That's the typical time span that we see people in that BDA and business development associate role for. Once you complete your milestones, you'll then be promoted to a sales development representative, an SDR. And in that SDR role, the current role that Dylan's in, the sales development representative, is focused on inbound sales. So people reaching out via the 1-800 number, people reaching out via the chat on the Salesforce website. Those are the customers that Dylan's working with directly. And then hopefully Dylan will be in that role for about a year and then be promoted to a business development representative. And that's where you're going to focus on that outbound, that cold call and cold outbound sales, working with an account executive, really closely to identify those new opportunities. And then from there, after about a year to a year and a half, hopefully then being promoted to an account executive. So Dylan, too, like with your new role in the sales development representative, what's your day-to-day like in that position with, feeling those inbound sales and how do you work with customers that do qualify?
Yeah, another great question. So with the SDR role, just to preemptively say it as well, is like going from BDA to SDR was a really nice transition because of like the milestones and the prep work that you can do and just shadowing other SDRs before you go into the position, just to say that. But then for the day-to-day that I do now, is we typically will start at 7:30 in the morning. We'll have leads from the night before and other things to go through to make sure that we can actually work and call them or pass them if they need to appropriately. And then usually from around 7:45 to 10 a.m. my time is we'll have a lot of like our own prime calling hours. So we'll call a lot of our open leads, the people that we have in our work queue and all our other lists that we've created. So we'll do that calling. And then from around 10 to 11, there's usually a few meetings that we have thrown in there, other things to practice and make sure that's going well. And then around 11 to 1 is I usually will take a lunch break and get other things done in that time, a little other admin work. Then 1 to 3, again, I hit phones pretty hard again, just really crushing those dials and making it really important for that time because that's when I find the most connects and most pickups to actually get to those meetings and get them set up. And then 3 to 5 is a lot of different admin work as well. Like if I still need to be making calls, I'll go on my call side of things. If there's other admin work that I find is going to be more important, I'll go into that and just make sure I have my business nice and tidy and working well.
Yeah. All right. Excellent. Well, good. And so thinking about, when your time in the business development associate role, you said that helped prepare you so much for SDR. So thinking about that business development associate role, when you were in that role, like what were some challenges that you encountered? And then how did you navigate and work your way through those challenges?
Good question. So some of the challenges you could encounter was making sure, I would say twofold, was the first side was like the contact side. And this is something you had to figure out is with the metrics that you have with your contacts. It also matters like if you're just aimlessly adding them, but then also adding like good contacts. So at the very beginning, like I remember a lot of my contacts weren't having a lot of meetings associated with them. That's why I really wanted to start meeting with the BDRs every 2 weeks. So I was able to address and say like, hey, I want to make sure like the contacts I'm adding are doing well. Like who should I be aiming for? How should I learn how to prospect better? So that was really nice. So after a few weeks of working with my BDRs more and working my BDR manager closer, I was able to actually start adding a lot more important contacts that had a lot more meetings set, which was really nice to see. And just also teaching me about prospecting for when I do go up to be BDR in a few months. And then on the other side of things as well was like a few challenges, was just some of the milestones. They are challenging. They really want to have a high rigor and high class here at Salesforce to make sure like the presentations you do are really done well. Make sure that your mock call is done really well. So a lot of the practice, I would just have to do a lot of practice with those. So I practiced with different SDRs that were above me at the time, practice my colleagues, I practiced my BDR manager and just really lean on other people. So I would really just do a lot of different practice and a lot of hard work that went into it, but then just make sure I was really strategic with my business.
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome. And so let's shift gears here a little bit and then talk about what that interview process is like. So what the process looks like is the business development associate role will be posted on our careers website. And so we really recruit in a couple of different cycles. One, we are typically hiring every single month to bring business development associates in. So if you're a recent grad, we've got opportunities coming up the rest of this year and then early into 2022. But then also if you're in school right now and you're going to be graduating next spring, this fall is prime time for us to be recruiting you for our summer 22 openings. So those job applications will be on our Futureforce Careers website, where you'll be able to review and apply and submit your applications. And then the process will be kicked off with a recruiter. Either myself or one of my colleagues will do typically about a 15 to 20-minute phone screen, really gauging your experience, your background, why you want to go into sales. And then from there, if you pass the phone screen with the recruiter, you'll then move to a panel interview. And what that panel interview looks like is it's an hour-long interview. You'll be interviewing with the hiring manager for the business development associate role, as well as some managers from the sales development representative role. And throughout that hour interview, really going to be evaluating you on a set of competencies. And then after that hour interview, we make a hiring decision. And then typically, depending on what the time frame is, either it would be starting immediately, depending on when you've graduated and when you've applied for, or potentially for next summer. And so with that interview process, Dylan, you obviously went through the phone screen with me. So, what was that experience like for you going through phone screen to the panel interview, and how did you prepare for it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the way I was able to prepare well, Sean, is I wanted to work for Salesforce for a while prior to even applying to the BDA role. I applied to a few different roles as well, but I went through the interview process, which was nice to have a good understanding of the company. But the biggest takeaways to really prepare for your interview was, I went on Glassdoor. I looked at what similar questions they were that you would ask and make sure I was prepared to answer those and knew what was going on. The other thing as well that I did was I reached out to my network of people that were working at Salesforce. So I went on LinkedIn and used those own prospecting skills and looked at people that were BDAs and SDRs and said, hey, I have an interview coming up. Can I please speak with you or have 10 or 15 minutes to see what your process was like? So I could have a good understanding of other questions to look for, things to say, and things that were important that you were looking for. So those were two things. And I think the final thing that was really important to prepare for the BDA, for your first phone call, was just going on Trailhead as well. So that's Salesforce's learning platform. And I went on that just to learn about the Salesforce culture, have a better understanding of the products, and just kind of immerse myself in Salesforce more. So that way I'd have a better understanding of the lingo you were talking while I was on the phone, so I could be better equipped to communicate with you. And then on the panel side of things, I personally interviewed a while back, so I wasn't on the panel for my interview process, but I do know that I had the similar behavioral questions, and I've helped prepare a few different other candidates for the panel interview. On the behavioral question side of things, the way I practiced that was just really the CAR model is what I had was the challenge, action, and then response, or what happened after a story. So I'd be able to have a storytelling for all those behavioral questions or other things that were challenging to tell those stories and be able to show my attributes and why I'd be a strong person to add to the team. And then for the panel side of things, I've heard really good responses for people that have went through that process. My mentee, I talked about it. She did something as she ran an eyelash business, and she talked about how she would teach people how to put on eyeliner for her Teach Me Something. I've had another person who knows how to drive stick, who taught them how to drive stick. I had another person that did financial aid. So you can really customize it yourself. And it's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be enjoyable for the hiring manager and the SDR manager as well. That's going to be on the call. But a lot of the things that you're looking for is how are you presenting? How are you going at your pace? How are you being able to show that you can control your presentation and have different questions along the way and you're active listening? So, those are the big things that you look for. And those are the things you want to practice beforehand. Because I've done a few different practices for those.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And you bring up a great point. So for that panel interview, part of the interview will be what we call Teach Me Something presentation. So you're going to teach the interview panel about something. So like Dylan mentioned, putting on eyeliner, how to drive stick. There have been candidates who have taught a golf swing. There have been candidates who taught how to make floral bouquets. So really you've got free reign as far as what the topic is. And those things that Dylan mentioned are going to be what the managers are really looking for. How concise and direct and to the point are you with your presentation? Are they going to walk away from that presentation and say, I learned this from our candidate? I think they're going to look for that. How engaging are you? So are you just talking off slides, or are you doing touch points? Are you engaging with your audience? Those are all going to be really important parts to that Teach Me Something presentation. And then it'll go into that behavioral based interview question where, like Dylan mentioned, that CAR method or the STAR method are really great methods to, express your previous experiences, what actions you took, and then what were some of the results because of your actions. And then that final part of that interview will be you asking the interview panel questions. So, that's a really important part of the interview process. Curiosity and asking questions is a huge part of sales. So, the managers want you to see that you are actively listening during the interview. They want you to ask engaging questions about the role and about the business development organization and about Salesforce and direction. Those are the type of engaging questions that they want to see to really show, the interviewers that sales is something that you want to go into, and this role is the right fit for you. So with that too, thinking about just competencies in general, one of the things that we talk a lot about here are 7 sales skills that can't be taught. And with that, we really are looking for one, curiosity. We want people that are curious, that want to learn, that get it done and get it done right. The integrity, like Dylan mentioned, when he first started in BDA, he was pulling all these contacts, but they weren't necessarily going that far in the process. So really had to work with his BDR teams to pull the right contacts to really add value. If you're just adding a bunch of contacts, it's really not helping anybody. It's not helping your BDR team. It's not helping yourself. So really being able to pull those quality leads. So doing it right and getting it done well. Coachability is really, really important for this role, especially when you're going through those milestones. You're going to get coaching. You're going to get feedback. Dylan, like thinking about, when you went through your milestones, what were some of the coaching points, or how did you take those coaching points when you were going through your milestones?
Yeah, so the coaching points was really good. It was really nice to see how I would receive feedback here. And that was a big question I had before starting as a BDA. So the way we'd have our coaching points would be especially with my BDA manager at the time, Lexi would talk about first, how did you feel you did? So you want to have that self-awareness, which I know is one of our big things that can't be taught. So that I would say I think I missed out on these many filler words, or I wasn't able to tell a story, or I didn't ask a direct question after this slide to get you more engaged. The other ways that they would give me feedback as well is, we would have a section by section of, this is how you did on this slide, and this is how your overarching tone was, or your body language as well. So you could really have a good understanding of how you were presented. You can tell that they were actually really, really engaged with your presentation. So I knew that I had a good understanding of what I was doing for my presentation, and then was able to really thrive in my next presentation and get it prepared. And then even with that coachability as well, you can have practice sessions beforehand, and you'd also have those practice sessions with your colleagues, because I want to be able to be a good coach for my colleagues as well, for when I'm doing those presentations, and for my own mentees that I have, so that way they can be successful.
Yeah, definitely good. And then looking at some of those other areas and competencies that drive, drive for results, getting things done. That's a huge part of just being successful in sales. We like people that are competitive. We like people that are so self-motivated. We want people that are going to get the job done, and especially when you're in BDA, but as well as SDR and BDR, you're going to have dashboards, and you're going to be able to see kind of your performance versus others. We want people that are going to drive every single month to try to be number one on that dashboard. Problem solving. At the end of the day, that's really kind of what sales is. Your customers have a challenge, a pain point, a problem, and we're here to alleviate that problem with our products and solve that problem. Resiliency. Critical for sales. We want people that have faced challenges and have faced adversity and have been resourceful to overcome those challenges and that adversity. Like Dylan was talking about when he was in the BDA role, having to figure things out and learn things on his own, using those resources that were available to him to help himself overcome challenges. Self-awareness is really, really important. Understanding who you are, understanding your strengths and your weaknesses, and then really thinking about how the business development associate role is going to play into your long-term future and your goals, and also how it's going to help you develop and grow and improve. Like Dylan mentioned earlier too, the business development associate role really helped prepare him to go into the sales development role, and he was able to probably, correct me if I'm wrong, but you were probably able to improve on some weaknesses through that business development associate role and coaching and feedback. So that is a big part of it. And then the emotional awareness, being able to read situations and read people and read people's emotions. That's just a huge part of sales. And so thinking about the business development associate role, we've got locations across the US as well as Canada that we recruit for. So here in the US, our 4 locations are Atlanta, Denver, which Dylan's based out of, Chicago, and Indianapolis. And then also in Canada, we've got Toronto as a location. Right now, we are still in a virtual remote environment. So our interviews are remote over Google Hangouts. And then our onboarding, and when you start, that is a remote process too as well. And so as your recruiter, if you're accepted and accept the job here at Salesforce, I'll walk you through those stages in that process, and it's a really smooth process to get you onboarded and get you started here at Salesforce. So with that, Dylan, did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
Only thing I would add, especially if there's a person looking at this and they're really interested in the BDA role, is, definitely do your research, reach out to someone, reach out to me, look at other people that are in your area for the BDA role as well. Try to use somewhere for a connection. If you see you went to a similar college, be resourceful and show your own prospecting skills to get the job. It's not easy to do. Salesforce is a challenging company to get into. That's why I wanted to work here, and the people that work here are wonderful. So just really try hard and be savvy about it, and you should be able to hit your goals and believe in yourself.
Okay. Awesome. And so let's turn it over to you, the audience. So we've got time for a couple questions. So one question that we've had come in: what kind of sales experience are you looking for candidates to have before coming in? And so that's a great question. And you don't necessarily have to have sales experience. We have some candidates that have previous sales internship experiences. We've had some candidates that have maybe retail sales experience, but then we have candidates that haven't had sales experience at all. Maybe they've had, an accounting or finance internship or a marketing internship. And really that's okay. The competencies that we look for, you can, fulfill through roles outside of just being within sales. And I think that's what's great about this business development associate role is that, one, we want you to, express, articulate clearly why sales is the career path that you want to go into, especially if you're coming from a different background or area. And if you have sales experience, why that sales experience has been critical to you and what you've learned through it, and why you think coming into the business development associate role is really important for you. Also too, I've seen individuals that I've interviewed that have just had service industry experience too. So it's not just limited to individuals that have sales experience. So really a wide variety of profile. Really, it's more of, how have you, addressed those competencies? Let's see, we've got a question here. I recently applied for the sales apprentice role. Is that different from the BDA role? Yes, good question. So the sales apprentice role is another one of our entry-level sales positions. It is different than the business development associate role, but what I will say is that sales apprentice role is a great stepping stone to the business development associate role. So we recently had a sales apprentice convert into the business development associate role in May. And then we're probably gonna have another sales apprentice convert into the business development associate role this fall as well. So it's a great opportunity to get your foot in the door here at Salesforce, network, build relationships, and then hopefully that can propel you into the business development associate program or another entry-level position here at Salesforce. So great question. Are there mentorship opportunities for business development associates? So Dylan, this might be a really good question for you. When you come on, we call them trail guides. So, who is your trail guide from a mentorship perspective? And then have you had the opportunity to mentor anybody either in BDA or as an SDR? What does that look like?
Yeah, great question, Sean. So I instantly, first day I had my mentor was with Susanna. She did the BDA program herself as an intern. And then after that, she was crushing it as an SDR and was able to be a mentor herself. So I had a person to lean on as well. So any questions I had, and it's not like this mentor is going to be reporting back to your manager on how you're doing. It's able to be one of your friends and someone I actually hang out with outside of work, which is really nice. So I instantly had a mentor and was able to have a lot of my questions answered and have that practice for presentations, how to add context and those kind of answers, and then who to network with and things of that nature. And then as an SDR, after a few months of being in the SDR position, I'm able to actually have two mentees. So I mentor two different people, and then that's Noah and Jacqueline. So Jacqueline's in the BDA program right now, and I've been able to help her with her different presentations. So I helped her with just her phase 3 presentation she had last week. And then I just did a mock call with her yesterday, actually. And then another one of my mentees is actually in the SDR position right now. and I'm really hands-on with him, and that's Noah. So Noah's been doing really well, and I'm able to help him like with his calls, make sure that his process is going well, make sure that he's doing really successful as well. So you're able to actually get into mentorship, I'd say, after starting in BDA, because it was when you're in the SDR, after you're in an SDR position, or after like 3 to 4 months. So after around 8 to 9 months, you're able to actually start being a mentor and really giving back to the Salesforce community.
Yeah, that's awesome. Awesome. Well, you've done a great job. And that I think is going to wrap it up for questions in our session here today. Dylan, thank you for being here, for taking time out of, I know your busy day of, connecting with prospects and connecting with potential customers. So really appreciate your time and all the insights that you provided. And then to our audience, thank you so much for joining. I hope this was really insightful and helpful. Check out our Futureforce Careers website, our business development associate position for next summer 2022, as well as our openings for this fall will be posted next Wednesday, September the 1st. So you can go check out the position. It will be posted per location, and then you can submit an application, and then hopefully you'll hear from somebody from the recruiting team. So thank you again, and hope everyone has a good rest of your afternoon. Take care.
Thank you.